सकड़ लोक मान सहुरे करे सकल लोक सहुने निंदा करे वाच काच मन निष्ठन राखे वाच काच मन निष्ठन राखे धन धन कृष्ण वचन को प्रेम कहिए पीर पराई जाए समदृष्टि कृष्ण त्यागी परस्त्री जन मात समदृष्टि कृष्ण त्यागी परस्त्री जन मात जिह्वा थकी असत्य न बोले जिह्वा थकी असत्य न बोले पर धन लगाए हाथ वैष्णव जन को प्रेम कहिए जय पीर पाई जाने माया व्यापे नहीं जेने दुर्वैराग्य जना मन मारे माया व्यापे नहीं जेने दुर्वैराग्य जना मन मारे राम नाम शूतारी आगी राम नाम शूतारी आगी सकल तीरथ तेना वैष्णव जन को प्रेम कहिए पीर पराई जाने कपट रहित छे कारो क्रोध निवार्या रे कपट रहित छे कारो क्रोध निवार्या रे बड़ नरसैयो दर्शन करता बड़ नरसैयो दर्शन करता को कृष्ण जन को प्रेम कहिए जय पीर पराई जाने वैष्णव जन को प्रेम कहिए जय पीर पराई जाने परम दुखे उपकार करे तुए परम दुखे उपकार करे तुए मन अभिमान कृष्ण जन को प्रेम कहिए जय पीर पराई जाने वैष्णव जन को प्रेम कहिए जय
Namaste. A very warm good morning to all our brothers and sisters in Guyana, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Anguilla. Hope all of you are keeping safe and healthy. As a tribute to Mahatma Gandhi, the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center and the High Commission of India in Georgetown, in association with the Gandhian Forum for Ethical Corporate Governance Standing Conference of Public Enterprises, New Delhi, is presenting Gandhi Katha by a renowned Gandhian, Dr. Shobhana Radhakrishna, today, Saturday, the 1st of August 2020, from 11 a.m. onwards. As most of you are aware, in connection with the 150th birth anniversary celebrations of Mahatma Gandhi, the High Commission of India in Georgetown has been organizing a number of activities since October 2018, which included a LED projection of the film on Mahatma Gandhi at the Giftland Mall in Guyana, release of Mahatma Gandhi commemorative stamps by the postal departments of Guyana and Antigua and Barbuda, essay writing competition for students of various schools of Guyana, etc. The High Commission also arranged the singing of Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Janto, by prominent singers such as Lisa Punch from Guyana, Miss Kimberly King from Antigua and Barbuda, and Mr. Sylvester King Socrates Hodge from St. Kitts and Nevis. The Gandhi Katha focuses exclusively on the philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi, his ethical leadership, moral life, his practices in healthcare, and his environmental credo. Contributions of Mahatma Gandhi on public health, his practices of preventive healthcare, wellness of body, mind, and spirit for coping up and staying safe physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually is relevant to mankind, and more so in the current COVID-19 pandemic. Mahatma Gandhi's thought and principles on ethics, values, spirituality are a guide for self-management and has the strength to inspire and bring about a sea change. Gandhi Katha is an enchanting and comprehensive exposition on how an ordinary mortal can rise above petty personal preoccupations to become the extraordinary immortal spirit in the service of humankind that Gandhiji was. I commend Dr. Shobhana Radhakrishna of Scope for this venture. The Gandhi Katha is being live streamed on the Facebook page of the High Commission of India in Georgetown and Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center. It is also live on a couple of TV channels in Guyana. Hope all of you enrich your knowledge about Gandhiji through this Gandhi Katha and follow his ideals in life to make the world a better place to live in. I invite all members of the public to join this Gandhi Katha to learn more and be inspired by Mahatma Gandhi. Stay safe, stay healthy. Jai Hind.
Namaskar. Thank you,
Now,
Honorable High Commissioner Dr. K.J. Srinivasaji, for your kind message. I welcome you all to the Gandhi Katha, the story of Mahatma Gandhi, narrated by me and hosted by the Vivekananda Cultural Center, High Commission of India in Georgetown. During the commemoration of the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, which incidentally is also the 150th birth anniversary of Kasturba Gandhi, his wife. Kasturba Gandhi's contribution in making Mohan into the Mahatma and inspiring millions of women against injustice in South Africa and India for their fights for rights is extraordinary. I pay my humble obeisance to the Matru Shakti, to all of us, the women who comprise 50% of the world's population. I express my deep gratitude to the High Commissioner Dr. K.J. Srinivasaji and Sri K. M. Raoji, Second Secretary of the Indian High Commission of Guyana, Antigua and Barbados, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Anguilla, for hosting this Gandhi Katha amidst the challenging time of the coronavirus COVID 19 pandemic. To learn from Gandhiji's practices of health and well being, of body, mind, and spirit for coping up and staying safe physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually during and after the coronavirus COVID 19 pandemic, which has affected the entire humanity. I will also talk about Mahatma Gandhi's role in fighting for the rights of the Indian indentured labor in South Africa through the non-violent resistance called Satyagraha, which led and thousands of Girmitias on the path of justice, and self respect, which again had a great impact on other Indian indentured labor in places like in Mauritius, Fiji Islands, and in far off islands, as well as his efforts in highlighting the injustice against the Indian indentured labor in India and in ending the Indian indenture system in 1917. I will also talk about Gandhiji's passion for health and well being and for serving humanity during the public health emergencies. Today, the world is facing three kinds of global crisis. First is the COVID 19 pandemic. Second is the serious and long drawn economic crisis. And the third is the ecological crisis, environmental degradation, which is impacting everyone. We have to look for answers somewhere within ourselves by learning from the life of Mahatma Gandhi, who had said, "My life is my message." Gandhiji called himself a practical idealist. Whatever he read, saw, or heard, and if he liked it, he immediately started practicing on it without waiting for anyone. The main aspect of Mahatma Gandhi was in action. He had said, "An ounce of practice is worth more than tons of preaching." I convey my warm wishes to the people of Guyana, Antigua and Barbados, and St. Kitts and Nevis and Anguilla who have joined me online today. We stand in solidarity with all of you in our common fight against the COVID 19 pandemic. I recollect His Excellency Dr. Chedi Beret Jaganji's remarks about Gandhiji, and he had said, and I quote, "Mahatma Gandhi's greatness above all it was in his dedication to serve. Though an Indian national, he was a world citizen. By any standard, he would be categorized as great." I myself, during my students' days in the USA, was largely influenced by his great struggle. Gandhi Katha is based on the ancient Indian oral tradition of Katha or storytelling with songs, hymns, and narration from the scriptures. In a way, Gandhi Katha is unique because all the Kathas in India are the stories of people who lived thousands of years ago. This is the first Katha of its kind about a person who lived amongst us and in our present days and made a great impact on humanity. The tradition of storytelling was continued by the Indian indentured labor who would console each other through singing, drumming, and storytelling during their voyage, and of greater significance was the lasting friendship that developed among the Jahazis or the shipmates in all the island countries ruled by the British colonial rulers, where the Indian indentured labor were taken by the British. Gandhiji used to begin and end his days with prayers. These were prayers from all the religions of the world. Gandhiji said that ultimately all the religions point to the same truth of compassion, love, and forgiveness, and that everyone must study the essence of all the religions in an attitude of perfect reverence and must have friendship and respect for the practitioners of different religions and diverse cultures. All of Gandhiji's friends were from different religions and cultural backgrounds from around the world. One of the legacies he has given to the world is non-violent conflict resolution through interfaith dialogue for bringing about harmony and brotherhood. I will start the Gandhi Katha today by reciting the Chaupais from the Ramcharitmanas, which were Kasturba Gandhi's favorite.
काम को मद मान लोभ न क्षोभ न राग न द्रोह काम को मद मान लोभ न क्षोभ न राग न द्रोह जिनके कपट दम्भ नहीं माया तिनके हृदय बसहु रघुराया जिनके कपट दम्भ नहीं माया तिनके हृदय बसहु रघुराया सबके प्रिय सबके हितकारी दुख सुख सरस प्रशंसा गारी सबके प्रिय सबके हितकारी दुख सुख सरस प्रशंसा गारी कहि सत्य प्रिय वचन विचारी जागत सोवत शरण तुम्हारी कहि सत्य प्रिय वचन विचारी जागत सोवत शरण तुम्हारी तुम ही छाड़ गति दूसरी नाई राम बसहु तिनके मन मारी तुम ही छाड़ गति दूसरी नाई राम बसहु तिनके मन मारी
Last year, I visited 33 countries and gave 148 talks and Gandhi Katha. I visited South Africa, Fiji Islands, Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia, and Singapore, and had an opportunity to interact with the third, fourth, and fifth generation of the Indian indentured labor. In all the countries, people have great reverence and respect for Mahatma Gandhi. Many have taken up cudgels against injustice through nonviolence and are inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, and some of them are following his environmental credo, and still others have been deeply touched by his simple spiritual life. The new generation is eager to understand more about the greatest man of the last century who made such an impact on humanity. And in the words of the greatest scientist, Albert Einstein, who called him the supreme practical leader of change, let us listen in to his own voice.
I believe that Gandhi's views were the most enlightened of all the political men in our time. We should strive to do things in his spirit, not to use violence in fighting for our cause, but by non-participation in anything you believe is evil.
According to my understanding, Mahatma Gandhi's life was an epic of faith and endeavor. His faith was in truth, the ultimate reality of truth, and he endeavored to attain it through nonviolence throughout his life till the very last breath. Gandhiji's adherence to truth, nonviolence, and purity of means has inspired me to give Gandhi Katha so that people can put their hearts into understanding Gandhiji and learn from his extraordinary moral and ethical leadership, his spiritual lifestyle, his revolutionary thoughts, actions, his lifelong service of humanity against all forms of injustice, and how he continues to inspire people in all parts of the world at all times and in all ages. Gandhiji used to remain positive under all circumstances, and that was his main trait. He had faced many challenges in life. I think as the world is reeling under the impact of coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic and everyone is affected, it is important to face it humbly with reverence to the virus, gratitude and surrender to the divine forces which are beyond our control, fearlessly, intelligently, and with a positive outlook towards life. The more positive we, the ordinary people, will remain, the sooner we will be able to take this situation in an auspicious direction. For Mahatma Gandhi, this trait was his way of life. Mahatma Gandhi had said that the key to good health is prayer, Ramanama, nature cure, nutritious food, clean water, fresh air, physical and mental exercise, amongst many other things. In short, during and after the pandemic, we need to invest heavily in preventive measures and self care and nurture the not so sick. There are three difficult situations which are causing so much stress. The first is the pandemic of coronavirus, which is causing immense physical stress and sickness. The second is the financial crisis, which is causing physical and mental anguish. And the third is the anxiety, fear of anxiety, panic, and fear of death that is causing all this stress. The lesson the pandemic is teaching us is simple. When one member of the family falls sick, the entire family is affected, and soon the community is affected, the nation is affected, and then other communities in other nation in this globalized world. The well-being of one individual has an impact on people on the other side of the globe. This is true for every action of ours. What we eat, what we buy, what we think, and what we do has reverberations and repercussions on all life on earth. It is this anubandha, this interconnectedness, that sustains everyone on earth. We are in this together as one human family. Whether we choose to see it or not, we are living like brothers and sisters on the same planet, the Mother Earth. The current COVID 19 pandemic is a wake up call for every country, big or small, rich or poor, developed or developing. It has opened our eyes to the fragility of the existence of humans. Perhaps the greatest source of strength for Mahatma Gandhi was in his faith in God. Truth was the deepest and the most complete form of God. That faith gave him the constant awareness that he was to be nothing but an instrument in his hands. He was to go wherever he was led. For him, the guidance of God constituted two things. One, he had to walk on the path enlightened by truth that was available to him in whatever measures and form. Two, he had to constantly gaze inwards through introspection for finding inspiration through self examination and self purification. Deeper the faith, the greater was the endeavor for Mahatma Gandhi. He said, truth is God, Satya hi Parmeshwar hai. Faith in truth led Mahatma Gandhi to two other realizations. If God is omnipresent, then truth is omnipresent too. If each human being were an aspect of God, then each person is capable of truth, of being good and doing good to others. His endeavor throughout his life was devoted to the search of that element of truth, to awaken it and to nurture it. This is why he could feel absolute oneness with everyone, and that is his another trait. Because for all of us, we do not this realization does not set in easily. But because of this understanding of oneness, Gandhiji had no enemies. He did not want to settle scores with anyone, and he did not want to take any revenge. He merely wanted to extend his love, compassion, and respect to everyone. He respected individuals as individuals without attaching any labels, and that was one more trait of Gandhiji. During the Gandhi Katha, I will tell about more of his traits, and if anyone hears them carefully, understands clearly, and puts them into action or practice, he or she will benefit immensely. Reginald Arthur Reynolds, a British writer, a Quaker, and an anti colonial activist, lived in Gandhiji's Sabarmati ashram from 1929 to 1931. Reynolds was impressed by Gandhiji's vitality, his vision, honesty, tactical and strategic abilities, his personal charm, sense of humor, his logical and analytical mind, yet capable of real affection and the scorching passion for truth. Now I will play a dhun about Gandhiji's philosophy of Satya hi Parmeshwar hai or truth is God in Hindi, and it is called आंखें पवित्र रख सत्य ही तू बोल ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर कठोर.
आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल. सत्य ही है परमेश्वर बापू का बोल, सत्य ही है परमेश्वर बापू का बोल, उसी परमेश्वर की नित्य कर तू शोध, उसी परमेश्वर की नित्य कर तू शोध. आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल.
Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi spent the first 18 years of his life from 1869 to 1888 in India. Mohan, who was afraid of dark, became fearless and forgave those who assaulted him. The seeds of spirituality were sown in India, and curiosity aided his first steps. He began as a student of average intelligence and was an ordinary person like you and me who learned to search within himself and analyze the world through his intellect. This is yet another trait of Mahatma Gandhi. From 1888 to 1891, Mohandas Gandhi went to London as a student and studied law. His consciousness expanded by reading the works of the great philosophers and poets of the West, and he interacted with great reformers and thinkers. The shy, withdrawn Mohandas became the secretary of the Vegetarian Society of London. He became a barrister in London and also learned the lessons of citizenship. From 1893 to 1914, Barrister Mohandas Gandhi was in South Africa, where he spent close to 20 years of his life and did his sadhana or penance, fought against injustice non-violently, and became the advocate of the Indian indentured labor. The path of sadhana took him to Satyagraha. Satyagraha is using truth force, love force, and soul force to establish justice through self suffering and sacrifice to melt the hardest of the hearts of the adversaries through non-violence. After the incidents at the Petermarisburg station, where he came face to face with racial discrimination and was thrown out of the first class compartment, there was a metamorphosis. The individual barrister Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi turned into a societal Gandhi Bhai, and he gave the world a novel way of fighting injustice called Satyagraha, which is his first legacy to humanity. And that inspired Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, Father Desmond Tutu, Father Kunz, Saint Teresa, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, Cesar Chavez, George Bernard Shaw, and many others, including His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was greatly influenced by Mahatma Gandhi and used the same principle to obtain civil rights for blacks in America. He had said, if humanity is to progress, Gandhi is inescapable. And also said, and I quote, Christ furnished the spirit and motivation, while Mahatma Gandhi furnished the method. Through our paths, we will make them see injustice. And listening to Reverend Martin Luther King's voice.
The person who has influenced my life in terms of action more than anybody is Mahatma Gandhi.
Gandhi? Where did you come to Gandhi?
I came to Gandhi in the same setting in theological seminary days. I had heard of Gandhi, but I remembered hearing a message by the president of Howard University, Dr. Mordecai Johnson, who had just returned from India. He spoke in Philadelphia on his trip to India and the whole philosophy of Gandhi and passive or nonviolent resistance. Now, I was so deeply moved by the message that I went away and bought several books on the Gandhian, on Gandhi and Gandhian technique. And at that point, I became deeply influenced by Gandhi, never realizing that I would live in a situation where it would be useful and meaningful.
And actually used it actually would apply it in
Yes.
this country.
Mahatma Gandhi, the leader of the Indian freedom movement, saw firsthand the plight of the Asian or Indian indentured labor or Girmitias, who were also called as coolies in South Africa, and campaigned on the issues during the first decade of the 20th century. The system of indentured labor was officially abolished by British government in 1917, and Gandhiji had a great role in that also. And also, he had earlier initiated the process of raising awareness about the plight of the Indian indentured labor. Dr. Gene Sharp, American writer on nonviolent struggle and founder of the Albert Einstein Institute, drew ideas and inspirations from the thinking and life of Mahatma Gandhi. He said, and I quote, Gandhi also exhibited a remarkable sense of political strategy in his implementation of nonviolence on a mass scale. His approach to nonviolence was based on the moral principle of refusing to use violence against his opponents. In 1904, in South Africa, after reading John Ruskin's book Unto This Last, Barrister Mohandas Gandhi transformed his life and started leading a simple community life of self control, voluntary poverty, bread labor, and sarvodaya or welfare of all. He established 4 ashrams during his lifetime, 2 in South Africa called Phoenix Settlement in 1904 and Tolstoy Farm in 1910, and 2 ashrams in India called Sabarmati Ashram in Ahmedabad, which he established in 1917, and Sevagram Ashram, where Mahatma Gandhi and Kasturba Gandhi lived in poverty like the common villagers of India from 1936 onwards. This was his ideal of a non-violent face-to-face society for Sarvodaya or welfare of all through constructive programs, which is his second gift to humanity. I'm happy to inform you that I was born and brought up in his last ashram in Sevagram. My father was inspired by Gandhiji since his childhood and joined the non-violent freedom struggle in India and lived in the ashram. Even after Gandhiji passed away in 1948, for more than 5 decades, my parents and all of us continued to walk on the path that Gandhiji had shown to humanity. So, what I'm telling you all is based on what my parents have told me, my own understanding and experience of Gandhiji, who inspired generations of people who have followed his path and continue to do so even today. Ashram life was a life of strict discipline from 4 a.m. to 9 p.m. It was a simple life of shrama or labor, voluntary self control, punctuality, discipline, promptness, minimalistic living, living in harmony with nature, following the environmental credo of Gandhiji of minimum use of resources, recycling, reusing, and refusing. Nature cure, having simple vegetarian diet, caring and sharing the joys and sorrows of each other, being ever vigilant, walking, and Gandhiji used to walk for 18 kilometers every day, daily morning and evening prayers, observing Ekadasha Vrata or 11 vows, for leading a life of purity and self control, practice of cleanliness, sanitation, hygiene, spinning and weaving, bread labor, disciplined life, constructive programs, and of utilizing every minute of time in the service of humanity. Time is the only non renewable resource that all of us have. And we must use time very carefully, like Gandhiji did. He is the role model of punctuality, promptness, and discipline. That is another of his trait. One more trait is that he used to be ever vigilant and had perfect control over his sleep. Gandhiji used to work for 18 hours a day. Gandhiji's unique practices of silence, prayers, fasting, and spinning gave him the internal strength. He carried on his experiments in health and wellness through nature cure, diet control, hydrotherapy, sun bath, mud packs, and observing silence for one whole day. The ashram inmates not only participated but modified and validated them and still continue to practice till this day, pointing to their relevance. So Gandhiji has given 3 gifts to humanity, and that is Satyagraha, about which many people know but do not know everything. Constructive programs, about which very few people know, and this was to establish justice at the grassroots levels and make people live with self-respect and dignity, and Ekadasha Vrata for pure moral ethical life. Ivan Illich, the Croatian Austrian philosopher, had come to Sevagram ashram in 1978, and he sat for a long time in the Bapu Kuti, and he said, and I quote, "This hut of Mahatma Gandhi demonstrates to the world how the dignity of the common man can be brought up. It is also a symbol of happiness which we can derive from practicing the principles of simplicity, service, and truthfulness." In the ashram prayers in the morning and evening, the first verse from Ishopanishad, the scriptural text from India, used to be recited. Isha vasyamidam sarvam yat kincha jagatyan jagat tena tyaktena bhunjitha ma gridha kasya svidhanam. That everything in this universe belongs to God. Nothing really belongs to you. Enjoy the objects of the world in an attitude of perfect non-attachment. Enjoy it with a feeling of sacrifice, taking to the extent that is necessary for you, and leave the rest for others. In the society, never ever crave the possession of others. Nothing really belongs to you. Now, we will sing Gandhi Katha, a dhun describing the same sentiments in Na Yah Tera, Na Yah Mera. Very few people know that as a couple, Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi contributed immensely 123 years ago for public health emergencies and service of humanity. Gandhiji dedicated his life for serving the entire humanity, which started by serving his father and mother in his childhood in India. In 1896, Barrister Mohandas Gandhi took training in nursing in Cottage Hospital in South Africa and volunteered to take care of the patients. In 1897, he nursed and cared for a native leprosy patient who had come to his place seeking for help, and later on, with the help of his friend Parsi Rustamji, set up the hospital for leprosy patients in Durban. During the Second Anglo-Boer War from 1899 to 1902 and in the Zulu uprising of 1906, he established the Natal Indian Ambulance Corps, and along with 300 free Indians and 800 indentured labor, served as a stretcher bearer and took care of grievously wounded people. In the bubonic plague outbreak in Johannesburg in 1904, he and Kasturba Gandhi not only immediately rushed to help the Indian indentured labor who were living in coolie settlement, which were very, very unhygienic and had an unsanitary condition, but also quarantined them in an empty godown and retreated them through nature cure. Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi, along with the family members, returned to India in 1915. In the Spanish influenza pandemic of 1918, Gandhiji opened up his Sabarmati ashram as a quarantine center, treated and served patients through nature cure, gave them simple diet to boost their immunity, and maintained physical distancing. And they also, both the couple, took care of the families of the patients, counseled them for maintaining physical distancing, looked after their mental and spiritual needs, and joined them in the prayers and recitation of Ramanama, and advised them for being positive and taking care of each other during the time of the Spanish flu pandemic. Gandhiji had said on November 10th, 1918, that our ancestors could build such strong bodies in the past, but today we are reduced to a state of miserable weakness and are easily infected by noxious germs moving about in the air. There is only one, and only one really effective way by which we can save ourselves from them, even in our present broken state of health. That way is the way of self restraint, sanyam, or and of imposing limits on our acts, desires, and wants. Arnold Joseph Toynbee, the British historian and philosopher of history, said very famously, and I quote, "The generation into which I have been born has not only been Hitler's generation in the West, but also Stalin's in Russia. It has also been Gandhi's in India, and it can be already said, forecast with some confidence, that Gandhi's effect on human history is going to be greater and more lasting than Stalin's or Hitler's." Though Gandhiji's role and his contribution to the political arena are well known, what is less known is his contribution towards health. Not many people are aware that he wanted to become a doctor and ended up being a barrister, but that did not end his pursuit for learning to treat others through nature cure. So he wanted to help and really treat the poor patients. His interest in health, hygiene, nutrition, and disease was as great as his interest in politics. He insisted that by adopting preventive measures, it is easy to manage the diseases and one can treat it better. He also said that it was important to maintain cleanliness, have a controlled diet, and an exercise regimen, and that it would be best to avoid overconsumption of medicines, especially those that were not required. These lessons are so relevant during the current coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. Gandhiji practiced law for about 20 years and then quit it. But for as long as he lived, he continued working to heal the sick. He was also a firm believer of naturopathy and conducted experiments related to diet and fasting. He always believed that it was important to understand what caused diseases and then remove that very cause rather than falling ill and then attempting to treat it with excessive medication. Mahatma Gandhi's messages to the world on the vital question of health and well being is very important. To him, the study of this question was part of the service to God and His creation, which was his mission. Knowing to care summed up his life. His message was simple, easy to follow. It encouraged every Indian to respect simplicity, voluntary self control, reduce the wants, follow the Indian tradition, cultural practices, and the values taught by the Indian ancestors through yoga, Ayurveda, following the environmental credo, nature cure, and living in harmony with nature. His attire represented the message to lead a simple life of voluntary poverty. His teachings included instructions on manner of dress, personal health, hygiene habits, vegetarian diet, values, and making choices that reflect the nation's true spirit. He was a great advocate of nature cure, which he followed rigorously on himself for taking good care of his body. And in these times of the COVID-19 pandemic, it is important to learn these lessons from Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhiji was very much interested in health and wellness and remained ever vigilant about his own health as well of others. He said that our lifestyle should be such that it should not let any disease come anywhere near us, and every person is responsible for taking care of his or her body, mind, and spirit impeccably. Gandhiji maintained that health and wellness means that one should keep the body healthy without any disease and must carry on the day's routine without getting tired. Gandhiji advised to have perfect understanding of our bodies and said that everyone must understand that it is made up of the five elements that are found in nature. And that has been told by our ancestors, also our ancient seers and sages. And these five elements are air, water, earth, fire, and akash or space. For the wellness of our bodies, the balance and harmony between all these five elements is very necessary. Our ancient Indian scriptures have also told us that man evam manushyanam karanam bandhamokshayoha bandhaya vishayasaktam muktam nirvishayo smritaha. For man, the mind is the cause of bondage, and the mind is the cause of liberation. Mind absorbed in the objects of the sense objects is the cause of bondage, and the mind detached from the sense objects is the cause of liberation, according to the Amrit Bindu Upanishad 2, which is part of the five Amrit Bindu Upanishads from the Atharva Veda, which has given us the system of Ayurveda. For Gandhiji, the outside universe was but a reflection of the inside universe. He repeated time and again that the universe is compressed in an atom. There is not one law for the atom and another for the universe. It was based on his actual experience that gave him the conviction that the moral principles have no meaning unless they can be made to serve as the guide of conduct in the daily affairs of man. The Sanskrit proverb says, Yatha Pinde Tatha Brahmande. You are the universe within the universe. As with the self, so is the universe. What is going on within you, that is the same what is going on in the universe. Now listen into Gandhiji's definition of truth, which was utter as you think and act as you utter, in the dhun called Man Vani Karma Se Satya Hi Tu Bol.
मन वाणी कर्म में सत्य ही तू बोल, मन वाणी कर्म में सत्य ही तू बोल, जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तू खोल, जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तू खोल, ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान, ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान, सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमधुर गान, सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमधुर गान, मन वाणी कर्म में सत्य ही तू बोल, मन वाणी कर्म में सत्य ही तू बोल, जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तू खोल, जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तू खोल, ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान, ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान, सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमधुर गान, सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमधुर गान.
In Gandhiji's life, we see the union of Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Karma Yoga, and he had immense faith in prayer, meditation, Ramanama, Swadeshi, Swachhata, Swavalamban, Seva, and Sarvodaya, and spoke out from his personal experience. For the benefit of the readers of the Indian Opinion newspaper in South Africa, in or about the year 1906, Mahatma Gandhi wrote a few articles under the heading Guide to Health. He was constantly experimenting with his health through nature cure and dietetics since his student days in London. In today's situation, apart from the coronavirus COVID 19 pandemic, people are already suffering from lifestyle diseases like diabetes and BP. Gandhiji had advised his political guru Gokhleji on December 4th, 1912 by writing to him, and I quote, that ample fasting, strict adherence to 2 meals, entire absence of condiments of all kinds from your food, omission of pulses, tea, coffee, etc., regularly taking of Kunhe's bath, taking brisk walk in the country, ample allowance of olive oil and acidic fruit, and gradual elimination of cooked food. And all this, if you do it regularly, it will get rid of your diabetes and add a few more years than you think to your life of service in your present body. In 1942, when Gandhiji was imprisoned in Aga Khan Palace jail, when he was leading the Quit India movement, he wrote the book Key to Health. On 27th August 1942, Gandhiji wrote in the preface that book was translated into several Indian languages. An English translation also appeared, and that reached the West and it became very popular. He said that perhaps the reason for its popularity is to be sought in the fact that I have looked upon the problem of health from a novel point of view, somewhat different from the orthodox views adopted by the doctors and the Vaidyas. He wrote, I am giving a new name, Key to Health. Anyone who observes the rules of health mentioned in this book will find that he has got in it a real key to unlock the gates leading him to health and will not need to knock at the doors of the doctors or Vaidyas from day to day. I must tell you that Gandhiji was the first environmentalist, and with his stunning premonition and knowledge, he had declared that the earth has enough for man's need and not for man's greed. Greed will be the main reason for the environmental degradation and the ecological crisis he had predicted more than a century ago. He had also said that the earth, the air, the land, and the water are not an inheritance from our forefathers, but on loan from our children. So we have to hand it over to them as it was handed over to us. Last year on October 2nd, I was invited to deliver the keynote address at the United Nations Regional Office in Vienna, and along with others, released the stamp brought out by the UN Postal Department with that quote. Gandhiji therefore comes across as the greatest healer, the wellness guru, and a role model who is free of cost during the time of coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic and forever. Will Durant, the American writer, historian, and philosopher, best known for his book The Story of Civilization, spoke some of the most inspirational words ever about the Mahatma. And I quote, not since Buddha has India so revered any man. Not since Saint Francis of Assisi has any life known to history has been so marked by gentleness, disinterestedness, simplicity of soul, and forgiveness of enemies. We have the astonishing phenomenon of a revolution led by a saint. And I must also tell you that we will have to learn to live with COVID-19 now and in future as well. Instead of reinventing a new lifestyle, we just have to get inspired from the life of Gandhiji to make necessary changes in thought, action, and conduct for coping up physically, mentally, and spiritually. And this is the future that it is pointing out to us, the pandemic is pointing out. Many lessons are very clear, and some are still unknown, surrounding us in uncertainty. This uncertainty is causing a lot of mental stress, anxiety, existential crisis, fear of extinction and death, and the mass psychology of living in depression and grief is pointing out towards this fact. We are collectively grieving for the loss of our known lifestyle. However, at a deeper level, it is for our own wellness to coexist in harmony with Mother Nature. And because our mere existence depends on that, we must live in harmony with the universe by supporting the nature, by taking care of all its creation. There is no alternative to this lifestyle. For all of us, there is no other way than the standard prevention and taking care of oneself and others. Community and mutual support is essential, and so is the happiness and welfare of others by for having access to pure water, food, and air. We have to say no to injustice. We have to live in brotherhood. Our great Vedas have called us Vishwamanava, the global citizens, and they've always maintained that it is world is one family, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We are all part of the same human family, irrevocably interrelated and interdependent. And as I had said earlier, we have only one home, the planet Earth, which is our Mother Earth. And if we want to know all this, and understand it deeply, the art of living, we must revert back to Bhagavad Gita, which teaches us the art of living. And Gandhiji had based his conduct for the past 38 years and till the end of his life on the main messages of the Bhagavad Gita, living selflessly without attachment and possession. And after 38 years of practicing on it, he wrote the translation of the Bhagavad Gita called Anasakti Yoga, or the Gospel of Selfless Action, which was based on his conduct. So he, as the Bhagavad Gita says in chapter 3, verse 21, Yad Yad Acharati Shreshthas Tat Tat Evetaro Janah Sa Evam Pramanam Kurute Lokastat Anuvartate. Whatever an ideal person does, so do other people by following him. I will end Gandhi Katha today by Gandhiji's blessings for health and well-being of all of you by reciting the Sanskrit shloka and through the Gandhi Katha Dhun, which is the Sanskrit shloka is a peace benediction for the universal welfare. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Let all be happy. Let all be healthy. Let all experience auspiciousness. Let no one be overwhelmed by grief. Om, peace, peace, peace. I once again take this opportunity to thank the Swami Vivekananda Indian Cultural Center, Embassy of India in Georgetown for hosting the Gandhi Katha today. My special thanks to all of you who have joined me online today and have given me the most precious gift of your time. I also thank the singers Srimati Swati Bhagat and Sri Deepak Kalraji and Dr. Ravi Chopra for his presentation, which kept you informed, and to all the and to my mentor Sri Narayan Desai ji, who had composed the Gandhi Katha Thun. Gandhiji had said that peace is the only positive force which will lead us from darkness towards light. And now I will end the Gandhi Katha with the dhun Shubha Mangal Ho.